This content is not suitable for children and may contain depictions of violence.
Hi, I'm your host Cambo. Grab a beer and pull up a deck chair. This is True Crime Island, another true crime video. So Islanders, last week's case was such a sad and gruesome crime. This week isn't much better. I hope you're all doing fine. Try to keep safe and your distance from one another until this curve has flattened. Now, this case is from 1981. It's another one of those random killings that had no reasoning behind it at all. It wasn't a crime of passion, drug or business deal gone wrong. Not that those things validate taking someone's life, but at least they provide the motivation behind it. So we've got references this week. Sydney Morning Herald's the usual. The Age, Forgotten Illawarra blog, Crime Investigation Australia, ABC, Daily Mail and the Illawarra Mercury. Now this murder was extremely gruesome as well, and whether or not the perpetrator got what he deserved, well, we'll see by the end of the show. So tonight we go over the murder of Kim Barry, born 1961 at Wollongong, New South Wales, to Brian and Beverly Barry. She had a younger brother Wayne, and the family lived at Rama Avenue, Mount Pleasant, and that's about a 10-minute drive northwest of the town centre of Wollongong. Her grandpa lived with the family as well, and that was nice. Kim was a happy and active child who did well in school. As a teenager, she was trusted to babysit for a next-door neighbour and avoided the so-called the bad girls or bad groups at school. You know, she avoided those that were experimenting in hard drugs and the like. And that's according to Barry, her dad. As she got older and left school, she enjoyed going out with her friends, dancing. She even signed up for dance lessons at a local dance studio. She had plans to become a nurse and volunteered at the local differently abled institution called Cram House. Here, she worked hard and didn't shy away from the challenges that arose. The constant cleaning, the feeding, and just helping in the best possible way. Her heart was 100% in the job. So now we get to Friday the 6th of February 1981. Kim's parents have gone away for the night and Kim's been asked to babysit. Well, babysit probably isn't the best word, but mind her 15-year-old brother Wayne. However, she decides to go out with a friend Donna Holland to the movies. Now after the movies, they decide to grab a few drinks and dance at the Crown Gardens Disco in Wollongong, which opened up onto Crown Lane near the intersection of Crown Street, if you know the area. There is a shopping centre there now. Kim buys a bottle of Liebfra wine at the bar and meets an old acquaintance, Graham Jean Potter, who she met at the dance studio when she was doing those dance lessons, and that was back in 1978, so about 3 years before. Potter, a 23-year-old former morgue worker, now worked as a coal miner. He was at the Crown Gardens with his younger brother Glenn and a couple of friends. Potter was celebrating his Bucks night as he was getting married the next week, which happened to be Valentine's Day, and Glenn was celebrating his 21st birthday. At around 11 p.m, Donna tells Kim that she wants to go home as she isn't feeling that well. Now Kim tries to persuade Donna to stay, offering for her to stay at her house as her parents had gone away. Kim also tells her she doesn't want to go home alone, but Donna insists she wants to get the last train home. Now Donna checks Kim's wallet to make sure she's enough money to catch a taxi, and then she goes home to Dapto. Potter then leaves his mates and sits down with Kim and they chat. As I said before, they briefly met at the same dance studio in 1978 while taking dancing lessons. Remember, this was pretty much prime disco time, and you didn't want to look like Theresa May on the dance floor. At around 11:15 p.m, Potter gets up, takes the remains of the bottle of Liebfra wine over to his brother's table and tells them he'll be back soon. Now, Potter and Kim leave the Crown Gardens together at this time, and they get a taxi back to his place. At around 11 a.m, Potter returns to the Crown Gardens and he tells his brother that Kim got cold feet at the door and she decided to go home. A short time later, Potter and his very drunk brother Glenn, they catch a taxi back to his unit. Now, Glenn is paralytic and crashes on the couch. In the morning, Glenn would wake up and leave without talking to his brother. So this is now Saturday the 7th of February. When Brian and Bev Barry get home, they see that Kim has left the brother alone all night. She's gone out and not come home. Now, back in the day, this happened and it wasn't seen as an alarming thing. I mean, the kids go out and sleep over at friends' places. There's no mobile phones or instant messaging. It was usually a case of when you did get home after staying out all night, you were dealt with on your return. I was a few times anyway. Anyway, on Sunday afternoon, the 8th of February, apprentice plumber Scott Davies was walking through the bush at Jamberoo Lookout, and he makes a gruesome discovery. And Jamberoo, by the way, is about a 50-minute drive south of Wollongong, and on a clear day you can see Kiama, Lake Illawarra and even 5 islands in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Wollongong. Now, it's known to be a bit of a secluded area and stolen cars are often dumped there. Now, this is why Scott was walking around below the lookout. He was seeing if he could find a few parts for his car. He sees a pair of legs poking out of the bush. When he gets closer, he can see it is obviously the dead body of a girl. He runs out of there and contacts the police. Now, the police rescue squad attend the scene, and when they first see the body, it looks like the head is obscured by a tree. But on closer inspection, they see that the head's missing. Now, the body is naked. The ankles are bound together with a bra and some sort of cord. One of the hands is also bound to the ankles as well. There's a blouse wrapped around the broken arm. Not only has the head been cut off, but so have all the fingers. The police rescue squad winch the body up the cliff face and they search the area for clues and the missing body parts. They don't find the head or fingers. They find no other clothing or possessions of the mystery girl. An initial autopsy can't find the exact cause of death, but they rule out sexual assault. It was found that the body had a broken arm and the fingers on one hand had been sawn off, but on the other hand, they'd been ripped off, possibly with pliers. Now, on Monday, the 9th of February, police, desperate to find the identity of the headless girl, they hold a press conference and show the bra and blouse, hoping that someone recognises it. And at this time, Beverly Barry is watching the news and she recognises the bra and the blouse. And of course, Kim hasn't been home since Friday night. What awful thoughts must have gone through her mind? Well, Brian and Beverly, they contact police and they go down to view the body for a formal identification. They are able to confirm it is Kim by a heart-shaped birthmark under her breast. Now that they've identified the body, investigators can now try to piece together a timeline of Kim's last movements. By Tuesday and Wednesday, the TV and print media has splashed Kim's face around the nation, and as the gruesome details of what's happened to her get out, it shocks and disgusts everyone. Now, cutting heads and fingers off bodies This is sort of a drug gang thing. But Kim's parents assure the investigators that Kim's not involved in any way with illegal drugs and none are found in her system. There are also rumours of a satanic cult being involved, but again, this is quickly ruled out as nonsense. Now, as they piece together Kim's final moments, they find out she was at the Crown Gardens disco on the Friday night and that her friend Donna left her there just after 11 p.m. They also get information that Graham Potter was with her at the time and that he left with her after 11 p.m. and returned about an hour or so later by himself. He then left with his brother a short time after that. Now, investigators also get information from a witness, now it's probably one of Potter's mates, that before he left with Kim, he put a half bottle of live-for wine on the table and said, "Finish this." Now, there was only one bottle of live-for wine sold that night, and that was to Kim Barry. So, not only do they have witnesses that say they'd been together that night, that's Potter and Kim, they also have the bottle of wine to link Potter to the last movements of Kim. Police tried locating Potter, but he'd skipped town. He'd withdrawn about $3,000 from his bank account. He writes a will and a letter which he gives to his solicitor. He also rings his brother Glenn to tell him he's going. The letter is addressed to his fiancée, Cherie Jones, and it was to tell her that he loved her, that he'd messed everybody's lives up, and he would tell her why he had to go sometime in the future. Now, clearly, he hadn't worked out his story yet. When investigators went to his Underwood Street Corrimal property to do a search of the premises, they found it empty and extremely clean. Potter had taken off in Cherie's Holden Kingswood, and so police put out an APB to try and locate it. On February the 28th, near to the Jamboree Lookout area, Dean Smith and his girlfriend were walking his dog in the bush. When his dog fails to come when he calls, he goes to have a look at what the problem is and sees that his dog's looking at a human skull. Police are called and search the area and not only find the skull, but following a trail of hair, they also find a ripped open plastic bag, bloodied sheets, a dressing gown, and the tips of fingers. Tests would show that the blood was the same type as Kim's, which was extremely rare, occurring in less than 1% of Australians. The fingers and skull were also determined to be hers. The skull had been bashed in on the left side above the eye, and there were pink blood stains in the teeth, which shows that she'd not only been bashed in the head with something like a large heavy instrument, but the staining indicated she'd also been strangled. Cherie's car that Potter had run off in was finally located at Goulburn the same day as the skull and fingers were found. Now, Goulburn's about a further 2 hours drive southwest of Sydney and probably a little bit less from Wollongong. A forensic examination found a blood-stained shirt belonging to Potter, but no other blood in the car. The blood was the same type as Kim's. There's also another love letter to Cherie telling her how much he loves her and that he has to go because he fears for his life. A new forensic examination of Potter's apartment finds traces of blood under a carpet, and in the bathroom there's also blood and it's in the drains. This also matches Kim's rare blood type. Now, hair similar to Kim's is found stuck on a freshly painted skirting board and in the clothes dryer. So armed with this information, investigators go to Potter's parents' place to search through all the stuff he'd stored there from his apartment. Now, they found heaps of cleaning products, paint, a hacksaw, a large spanner, and bloodstains in a wardrobe. Now, these bloodstains would match Kim's blood type as well. They also found sheeting similar to the type found with the skull and a dressing gown cord which was the same colour as the gown which was also found with a skull and fingers. Forensic examination found that the hacksaw made the same type of cut marks that were found on Kim Barry's finger bones. Now, these type of cut marks were also found on Potter's bath. There was a large adjustable spanner which looked like it may have been the weapon used to kill Kim. A couple of months later, on the 14th of April, Potter is found in the bath of his parents' house at Wombara, north of Wollongong, after they'd received a tip-off. Now, he'd dyed his hair red and grown a beard. He was arrested and charged with murder. He refused to speak to investigators, though. The next day, he appeared in court and protested his innocence. He told the magistrate Ian Pike, that he had returned to clear his name. Now, he was refused bail and remanded in custody until April 29. He would again be refused bail until a committal hearing on July the 22nd. It's at this committal hearing that Potter's story is finally told. So this is his story. He says that yes, he was with Kim on the night of the 7th, and they started chatting at the Crown Garden Disco. He said that Kim told him 2 guys had been harassing her and she wanted to leave. He said that she was too scared to go home alone and asked if she could go to his apartment for coffee. He agreed, but when they got there was a knock at the door. When he answered the door, 2 men forced their way in and started to hassle Kim. They threatened him and told him to go upstairs. He heard a struggle, and when he looked down, he saw Kim on the floor and she looked dead. The 2 men then threaten him, and they tell him that if he doesn't keep his mouth shut, they will kill him and his family. The guys then tell him to go back to the disco and act as if nothing had happened. So he says he went back to the disco and drank for another couple of hours. By around 4 a.m, he says he takes his brother home, who's legless, and when he opens the door, he sees the blood stain on the carpet covered by a sheet and Kim's body's gone. He then goes upstairs to sleep. The next morning he gets up and his brother's gone, and then the 2 other guys return. They muscle him up the stairs to the spare bedroom. This is where they've left Kim's body. The 2 guys take a body into the bathroom where they decapitate her and cut off her fingers. All the time they're doing this, they keep telling him that he'll be blamed for this if he goes to police, as it's his house. They then tell him to dispose of the body. The 2 guys leave, and Potter, he has to wrap Kim's body in a sheet. He puts her clothes, purse, jewellery and the murder weapon, which is a rolling pin, into one garbage bag, and he puts her head, fingers, bloodied sheets and his dressing gown in another garbage bag. He then hitchhikes to Cherie's place, where he takes a car back to his house to get Kim's body. He loads up the car and goes to Jamboree Lookout, where he throws her bound body over the cliff. Then he drives off. But he noticed he'd forgotten to get rid of the bag with her purse, rings, rolling pin and clothes in it, so he had to stop to throw that in the bush. He then drives off again, goes a short distance, and then realises he's forgotten to throw away the bag with her head in it, so he had to stop and throw that away as well. He then goes back to clean his unit, moves all his stuff to his parents' house. When he sees Kim's body is found a day later on the news, he takes Cherie's car, drives to Goulburn, he dumps it there, then catches a train to Melbourne. He changes his appearance with the red hair dye and starts to grow a beard. He then flies to New Zealand, but after a short while, he decided to come home to prove his innocence. I mean, fuck's sake, people. Do you really believe that story? Anyway, police will then get him to make an identikit photo of these 2 mystery men. But when they're shown to everyone that was at the disco at the night, no one recognises them. The identikit experts, they say that usually people will settle on the eyes first. But Potter kept changing the eyes. They thought he was bullshitting. In March 1982, the trial is held. Potter stuck with his story that there were two guys that came in and killed her, that he was threatened and forced to dispose of her body. He added that in the taxi on the way home, he'd seen drugs in her purse when she opened it, and it was probably drug dealers that were after her. Now, as she'd had her head and fingers removed, it must have been drug dealers that killed her. What other sort of person would kill anybody that way? As her fingers on one hand had been sawn off and on the other hand they were pulled off, probably with a pair of pliers, his defence tried to argue that because Kim's fingers were removed in two different ways, this indicated that there were two killers. The reality was that his story was fanciful and had so many inconsistencies. I mean, why would the supposed drug dealers kill Kim, then let Potter go and trust him not to go to the police straight away? They then leave her body there and return the next day. Now, how would they know Potter hadn't gone to the police and they were already at the murder scene? When Potter says he was told to go back to the disco and act as if nothing had happened, I mean, why would he then bring his drunk brother back to the murder scene when he had no idea if the two guys were still there? It just doesn't make sense. Then he goes to bed and he doesn't even bother checking around the house to see if the two guys are there or if Kim's body's still inside. He had ample opportunity to call police, but he reckons he would be killed by these drug dealers. Now, after disposing of the body, he takes off and changes his appearance. Again, why? The police know of the murder. It's in the news. Why not just go to them and explain what happened rather than disguise himself and flee? I mean, what he did made him look guilty as sin. He dumps the body, the head and the rest of his stuff in 3 different locations. Now, I will get to this second bag of stuff later because at the time of the trial, it hadn't been found. Also, how could you forget you had the murder weapon and all the possessions in a plastic bag in your car after dumping a body and then driving off and having to stop and go, oh shit, I've got that bag of stuff, I've got to throw that out. So he does that, then he drives off and goes, oh shit, I've also got her head and fingers in another bag. I better stop again and throw that in the bush. I mean, fuck's sake, this is just bullshit. Now, the prosecution had a different theory. Potter, even though he was on his bucks night, saw Kim sitting by herself and thought he'd see if he had a chance, as they'd met years before. Now, Kim had no idea he was getting married and had actually fancied Potter when they'd first met. So they ended up at his place, and I reckon Kim, and that's what the prosecution, I'm not the prosecution, that's what they thought as well, Kim had knocked him back. Now, maybe Potter was coming on too fast, or maybe Kim saw some of the wedding shit he had lying around. Maybe she saw photos of him and Cherie. Now, getting knocked back, this made Potter mad, and in his rage and possible struggle with Kim, he hit her on the head with the blunt instrument. He then hid a body upstairs and raced back to Crown Gardens Disco to give himself an alibi. On return to his house with his brother, he found that Kim wasn't dead after all and hit her a second time, this time to finish her off. In the morning when his brother left, he found that she was still alive, and so he strangled her, the evidence being in the pink discoloration of her teeth. He then cut her head and fingers off to make it look like the drug cartel killing and disposed of her body in 3 different places, hoping she wouldn't be found, and if she was, it would be difficult to identify her. He used 2 different methods to cut off her fingers to make it look like there were at least two different people that had killed her, and they were his phantom drug dealers. In April 1982, the jury would find Potter guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. But we'll get to how long he actually serves in a minute. Now get this, a couple of months into his sentence, He marries his fiancée Cherie Jones in prison. I mean, what the fuckity fuck? Now, I don't want to be a podcast hole to this woman, but this guy Potter goes around cutting people's heads off and dumps them in the bush. His version of events that led to the death of Kim Barry is just fanciful bullshit. Now, I can get how his mum and dad support him. They're blood. But Cherie had the chance to make a clean break from this scumbag, and she decides to marry him. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with people? Now, after serving around 8 years inside, Potter, after being put in medium security, I mean, what the fuck? He's in medium security. He breaks out and goes on the run. Now, luckily, he's captured the next day. But then we get this new truth in sentencing legislation in New South Wales. It is pretty much a good thing, but his sentence gets redetermined to a non-parole period of just 12 years and 8 months. In 1996, he's released after 14 years inside when he's considered to be a rehabilitated man. Now, what the actual fuck is that? He killed an innocent 19-year-old girl for no reason. Not only that, he cut her head and fingers off and dumped a body in the bush, and he only does 14 years? It's this sort of crime that needs the scum that did it locked up forever. Never to be released, for fuck's sake. Now, that's why these psychopaths get away with this shit. They can play the long game. Now, you know those people who always win in staring contests? Well, they're psychopaths. If you remember my first ever episode on Charles Sabra, that's on my audio podcast. And if you haven't heard it, have a listen. Please, it was my very first episode, so it is a bit wonky. Well, Sabraj was doing 12 years in an Indian jail for murder, and he was going to be released in a couple more years. The problem is, this meant he could be extradited to Thailand, where he was wanted for murder, and he would face the death penalty. But Thailand has a 20-year statute of limitations on murder, so he organises the prison guards to be drugged via a birthday cake. He escapes prison, but he doesn't run away. He hangs around town, making himself known so he can get recaptured. This gets him 10 more years tacked onto his sentence, so that by the time he's finally released, the statute of limitations in Thailand for his murder charges will have lapsed. I mean, what the fuck? He can really play the long game, and in an Indian prison as well. Now, this is the same with Potter. Play the good boy while inside, get out early, fool everyone. That's why he's able to con people like Cherie and get her to marry him. And that's how he can pull the wool over his parents' eyes. But I bet you his mum does know he's a fucking psycho. Remember I told you about the other bag containing Kim's possessions? Well, that would be found in 1987 by a guy going bushwalking along Jamboree Road. In the bag was Kim's purse containing her driver's licence and the $2 notes that Donna had seen inside it when checking she had enough money for a taxi on the night of her death. $4 to get home in a taxi. Oh, they were the days. Her ring and jewellery were in there as well as a rolling pin and all of her clothes that had been missing. The bit where Potter reckoned she had all these drugs in her purse, well, this was one of those just tiny little purse things and couldn't hold much. No drugs were found anyway. Potter, once released, would soon be wanted for the planning of the murder of 2 other men, including an associate of Mick Gatto, a Melbourne underworld figure, and that was over some drug dispute. And then he would also be wanted on federal drug charges over a 2008 ecstasy bust involving 15 million tablets smuggled inside tomato tins. Now, they had him, but he did get bail. And then he failed to turn up to his court appearance. He's been on the run ever since. Now, if you see him, he's extremely dangerous. Call Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000 or go online to report him. This can be all done anonymously. Now, he has been tracked and some of his campsites found. He's left notes there, and they indicate how he's been able to evade justice because it's listing things like wear fake wig and fat suits. He's also been caught on security cameras, but he seems to always be a step ahead of the cops. As I said, he can play the long game. Also found at the campsites were newspapers that had job ads circled for housekeepers and farmhands. Now I'll just read this little bit from abc.net.au. He has welding, beekeeping, hydroponics, aquaponics, gold prospecting and earth moving skills, and is most likely to look for work as a caretaker, farmhand or outback station hand. Now police believe Potter is likely in a relationship and is living in a rural area in Australia, and they warned, especially women, to be on the lookout for him. They said this is not a man you want as a friend. Now I'll have his photo posted on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so please keep an eye out. He could be anywhere, but probably a rural area in Queensland, New South Wales or Victoria. Study his eyes and nose. Now, maybe, this is a theory, you have a female friend in the country that's suddenly changed a little bit, become more withdrawn, and maybe she's got a new partner. I believe he's using his power of bullshit to persuade people to get them to help him stay on the run. Like they said, he might be in a new relationship. Remember, don't approach him. Call Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000 or go online to report him. Again, totally anonymously. So that's the end of the show. If you want to support the island, there are links in the description for Patreon, PayPal and merch. Please feel free to comment, like, subscribe. And you know what? I'd really, truly appreciate it if you'd share the channel. We're starting to get a little bit better now as we go on. So I've been your host, Cambo. You've been watching True Crime Island. As I always say, don't forget to delete your browser history. Good night. Boom fuckalunga.